Sometimes fate doesn't arrive in thunder or glory. It knocks softly on the door of an old, forgotten house. When a humble single-dad janitor bought an abandoned army home, he thought he was just rebuilding walls. But weeks later, 3 women in uniform appeared at his doorstep. And what followed would change every life inside those walls forever. If stories of kindness, second chances, and quiet heroes speak to your heart, we'd love to have you with us. Subscribe to our channel and stay for more true-to-spirit tales that remind us all it's never too late to start again. Now let's begin the story. The road stretched endlessly under the fading gold of a late autumn sun, its cracked asphalt leading to the forgotten edge of a military town that had long since gone quiet. Adam Brooks drove in silence, one hand steady on the wheel, the other resting on the worn teddy bear beside his daughter in the passenger seat. Abby hummed softly, her blonde hair catching bits of light that filtered through the truck window. Her small voice was the only melody that kept the ghosts of Adam's past from taking over. The old Navy patch still clung to the sleeve of his green work jacket, Rescue Squadron 9. He'd meant to take it off years ago after he left the service, but somehow he never could. Ahead, the horizon revealed it the house, or rather, what was left of it. The old army home, as the locals called it, stood half-sunken in earth and memory. The roof sagged under decades of neglect, windows clouded porch eaten by rot. Yet something about it stirred him. It wasn't much, just a structure of timber and time. But to Adam, it was a promise, a chance to rebuild what life had stripped away. Abby leaned forward against her seatbelt. "Daddy, is this really our new home?" Adam smiled faintly. "It doesn't look like much now, kiddo. But give us some time, and maybe a few buckets of paint, and you'll see." She giggled. "Will we paint it pink?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "Let's start with fixing the roof first, deal." They stepped out of the truck. The air smelled of pine and dust, that dry mountain air that seemed to hold its breath between seasons. Behind the house stretched acres of open land, the remnants of an old training ground, now reclaimed by nature. In the distance, the rusted flagpole still stood bent, but unbroken. Abby ran toward it, her red dress flashing like a spark in the dull light. Adam watched her twirl beneath it, her laughter carrying across the empty yard. That sound so pure, so alive, was the very reason he was here. 2 years had passed since cancer took Emily. She had been his world-strong, patient kind. The kind of woman who could balance a household while he was flying rescue missions halfway around the world. When she was gone, the world went gray. Adam buried himself in work at the base, sweeping floors, fixing pipes, pretending the past hadn't ended. But every night, when Abby asked Daddy, "When will we have our own home?" something inside him began to stir again. So he'd taken what savings they had sold the old truck and bought this forgotten army house on the outskirts of a town that once saluted him. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was faith. But it was something to hold on to. The sun began to sink behind the hills as Adam walked through the creaking doorway, flashlight in hand. The floorboards moaned under his boots. Dust motes floated in the beam of light like tiny spirits. Every corner told a story, the faded chalk lines on the wall from some soldier's children, a stack of yellowed letters half buried under debris. He picked one up, reading the name barely visible on the envelope. Lilt J. Carter. The surname sparked a faint recognition, maybe a family that once served on the same base. He tucked the letter back gently, almost reverently. From outside came Abby's voice. "Daddy, come see." She stood by an old swing, hanging from a pine branch, her small hands gripping the rope. The seat was cracked, but when she sat down, it held. "Push me, please," she said, looking up with those wide, trusting eyes. He hesitated, the kind of hesitation that comes when you realize moments like these don't last forever. Then he smiled, and pushed her slow and steady as the orange sky deepened into violet. "Higher, Daddy," he laughed. "If I push any higher, you'll touch the moon." "That's okay," she said between giggles. "Mommy's up there." The words landed softly, yet they cut through the evening like a bell in a chapel. Adam froze, his hand still on the swing. Abby looked at him not with sadness, but with the innocent certainty of a child who believed love could cross any distance. He swallowed hard and nodded. Yeah, maybe she is." The swing slowed. The air grew cooler. He lifted Abby from the seat and carried her toward the truck. The stars were starting to appear one by one like blessings. "Can we stay here tonight?" she asked sleepily against his shoulder. "Not yet," he whispered. "We need to fix a few things first. Tomorrow we'll bring tools, paint, and maybe some cookies. Then this place will start to feel like home." Driving back toward town, Adam glanced in the rearview mirror. The house stood small against the growing night, a single silhouette beneath the vast American sky. The road ahead was long uncertain, but for the first time in years, he felt something warm rise in his chest. Hope, fragile but alive. He thought of Emily's last words, the ones she made him promise before the illness took her voice. "Don't just survive, Adam. Build something beautiful for her." He looked at Abby sleeping with the teddy bear pressed to her cheek. Then he looked at the road that led back to the old house. "Yeah," he murmured under his breath. "We'll make it beautiful." Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of rain and pine, a promise of change. The old army home waited in silence, unaware that within its broken walls, a story of kindness, redemption, and new beginnings was about to unfold. 6 weeks later, winter had retreated, leaving behind the crisp breath of early spring. The road to the old army home now shimmered under morning light, and the once silent yard had begun to awaken patches of green grass, pushing through the dry soil, a faint melody of robins threading through the air. Adam Brooks turned off the ignition of his pickup truck and let the engine's hum fade into quiet. In the passenger seat, Abby balanced a paper cup of lemonade swinging her legs. The back of the truck was piled high with lumber paint cans and a rusted toolbox that had belonged to his father, a man who'd built things with his hands, not his words. "Ready?" Captain Adam asked, flashing a mock salute. Abby giggled. "Ready, Chief Daddy." He stepped out the gravel crunching beneath his boots and drew in the familiar scent of pine and dust. The house stood exactly as he'd left it, weary, but waiting. The porch still sagged on one side, and the roof needed more help than he could afford, but it was his. Theirs. Yet as he reached for the toolbox, something caught his attention, a thin column of gray rising from the old chimney. Smoke. Adam's pulse quickened. He hadn't lit that fireplace. No one should have. "Abby," he said calmly, but firmly. "Stay inside the truck, okay? Lock the door and keep your teddy with you." Her smile vanished, sensing the tone that came from his Navy days, quiet, decisive, no room for argument. She nodded, gripping the bear tight. Adam slipped the small flashlight from his jacket and approached the porch boots, silent, every sense alert. The front door was cracked open, and from inside came the faint murmur of voices, women's voices. He pushed the door wider, the hinge groaning like a warning. 3 figures froze in the half-light. The first stood nearest the hearth, a woman in a spotless white Navy uniform posture, erect, eyes sharp, but wary. Her chest bore the insignia of a commanding officer. Her hair, neatly coiled beneath the cap, shimmered with the faint reflection of firelight. The second and third wore faded camouflage fatigues. They looked younger twin sisters, by the shape of their faces, their hair tucked under berets. One held a hammer, the other clutched a small pot of instant coffee as if caught mid-morning routine. For a brief second, no one spoke. Then the woman in white broke the silence. "If you're calling the police," she said evenly, "please let us gather our things first. We didn't know this place was occupied." Adam studied her. Calm, controlled, the kind of voice that had once given orders over stormy seas. "You're on private property," he said quietly. "I bought this place 6 weeks ago." One of the twins stepped forward. "Ma'am, we thought it was abandoned. We'll leave right away." Before Adam could respond, a small voice piped up from behind him. "Daddy." "Are they sailors?" He turned sharply. Abby had slipped out of the truck, her red dress fluttering in the breeze, teddy bear in hand. Before he could stop her, she walked right up to the woman in white and stared in awe. "You have shiny buttons," she said wide-eyed. "Are you a hero?" The woman blinked, caught off guard. "A hero?" "No, sweetheart. Just someone who used to wear a uniform." Abby smiled, completely unbothered by the tension in the air. "That's okay. You can stay here. Daddy says we're fixing this place so people can smile again." For the first time, something flickered across the woman's face, the faintest crack in her composure. Adam lowered his flashlight. "She's right," he said, his voice softer now. "If you needed a place to rest, you found one. But I'd like to know who I'm offering it to." The woman exhaled slowly. "Commander Bella Carter, formerly of Naval Rescue Command." She nodded toward the twins. "These are Staff Sergeants Chloe and Casey Carter, my younger sisters." The name hit him like a faint echo. Carter. He'd seen it once scrawled on an old envelope in the dust of this very room. Adam gestured toward the couch, its springs visible through torn fabric. "Sit. Tell me what brings 3 soldiers to a broken house in the middle of nowhere." Bella hesitated. The younger sisters exchanged a glance before sitting boots, leaving faint marks on the floorboards. "We were part of a failed rescue op." Bella began, eyes fixed on the flickering fire. "A storm off the coast took down a civilian vessel. We saved some, but not all. I took the blame for the loss." Chloe spoke next, her voice trembling. She didn't have to, but she did. "We were ordered to stand down. She stayed in the air too long, trying to reach the last beacon." Casey finished the story quietly. Command called it insubordination. "We were suspended. No housing, no pay. Nowhere to go." Silence settled again, heavy as the dust in the corners. Adam leaned against the doorframe, studying them. The faces before him carried the weight he knew all too well, the kind of guilt that clings even when you've done the right thing. Finally, he spoke. "This house needs work, and so do I." They looked up, puzzled. "I've got 2 hands, and a kid who believes every broken thing can shine again," he said, glancing at Abby, who was now braiding Chloe's sleeve like it was a doll's hair. "If you're willing to help me fix this place, you're welcome to stay." Bella frowned. "You don't even know us." "I know your eyes," Adam said simply. "They look like people who've seen the storm and came back to shore." For a long moment, Bella held his gaze. Then slowly she extended her hand. Her grip was firm, warm, the kind of handshake that sealed things unspoken. "Then we help each other," she said. "Deal." Abby clapped her hands. "So we're a team now." Bella smiled, a small, unexpected curve of the lips that softened her entire face. "A team," she agreed. Outside, the last of the smoke drifted from the chimney, curling into the open sky. The house, for the first time in years, felt alive again. As the sun dipped behind the pines, Adam looked at the 3 women unpacking their few belongings. He didn't yet know that this chance meeting, born of ash smoke and a child's innocence, would change every life inside these walls. But something in his chest told him the wind had shifted. The old army home was no longer just a house. It was becoming a beginning. Morning broke over the hills, like a quiet hymn. The sunlight spilled through the pine branches, painting gold on the peeling white walls of the old army home. Inside, a pot of coffee bubbled faintly on the restored stove, sending its rich aroma through the air, the first sign that life had returned to this forgotten place. Adam Brooks leaned against the kitchen counter, sleeves rolled up, a streak of paint running across his forearm. His once-empty house was now alive with motion. Casey was outside, cutting warped boards into even lengths with the focus of a surgeon. Chloe was kneeling by the generator, muttering to herself as she adjusted wires, and Bella, the commander in white, stood at the window, notebook in hand, drawing up a rough sketch of the rooms they planned to rebuild. It should have felt chaotic, but it didn't. It felt right. Abby sat on the floor beside a mountain of old screws and nails, sorting them by shininess. "This one's Silver Daddy. It looks happy," she said, holding one up with her tiny fingers. Adam smiled. "Then it goes in the happy pile, Captain Abby." "Sir, yes, sir," she giggled, saluting dramatically, earning a rare smirk from Bella. The first days had been awkward, filled with cautious silences and polite distance. The house echoed with the ghosts of 4 adults who had seen too much and 1 child who still believed in magic. But little by little, the walls began to breathe again. The rhythm of work replaced the quiet of grief. By noon, the living room was filled with sawdust and laughter. Casey hummed an old country song while painting the window frames, and Chloe, with grease streaked on her cheek, emerged triumphant from the crawlspace. "Power lines are stable," Chloe announced. "If we don't overload it, we'll have lights by tonight." Overload. Adam raised a brow. "Define overload." Using the coffee maker and toaster at the same time, she replied, deadpan. "Then we'll drink coffee first," Bella said, without looking up from her notes, her tone clipped but faintly teasing. It was strange to see her like this, not in command, not behind a podium or cockpit. Her posture still carried authority, but her eyes, once locked in perpetual caution, were softening. Sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, she looked at Abby, and something like longing flickered in her expression. During lunch, they gathered around the old dining table Adam had rescued from the garage. It was dented uneven but solid, much like the people sitting around it. So Adam said, setting down a plate of peanut butter sandwiches. "What's the plan for the rest of the week?" Bella flipped her notebook closed. "We finish the roof patch, fix the door hinges, and check the septic system." "Sounds fun," Casey groaned, sipping lemonade. Chloe snorted. "You wanted to be an engineer, didn't you?" "Consider this advanced field training," Abby interrupted before the teasing could continue. "Can I help too?" Adam looked at her, then at Bella, who gave a small nod. "You can," Bella said, "but only with safe missions. You'll be our morale officer." Abby's face lit up. "What's that mean?" "It means you keep us smiling," Adam explained. "I can do that," she declared, proudly standing on her chair like a pint-sized general. Mission accepted. They laughed, and for a moment even Bella did a soft, genuine laugh that melted the invisible walls around her. That evening the house glowed with the soft hum of life. The new bulbs flickered on one by one, and everyone cheered like kids at a 4th of July fireworks show. Abby ran around the living room, twirling in delight. "We did it. We have light. The ghosts can see now," she exclaimed. "Let's hope they don't charge rent," Chloe joked. Adam leaned against the doorway, watching the scene unfold. His chest ached in a way he hadn't felt in years, not from pain, but from the strange warmth of belonging. For the first time since Emily's death, the house didn't echo with emptiness. It pulsed with energy, laughter, and something he dared not name yet. Later, as the others drifted off to their makeshift sleeping quarters, Adam found Bella still awake, sitting on the porch steps. The night was cool, the moon high. She stared out toward the old training field, her posture straight, but her shoulders heavy. "You okay?" he asked, stepping beside her. She nodded slowly. "I'm adjusting. It's strange being cared for when you're used to being responsible for everyone else." He sat down next to her. "I know that feeling. The uniform changes, but the weight doesn't." Bella turned to him surprised. "You were a pilot, weren't you?" "Rescue Wing 9. Search and recovery. Flew out of Norfolk." He paused. "I saw enough storms to last me a lifetime." Her expression softened. "Then you understand." "I do." He took a slow breath. "When you said you took the blame for that mission." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because leadership isn't about being right. It's about protecting those under you, even when the cost is your own name." Her voice dropped, steady but raw. "I couldn't save them all. So I saved what I could, my people." Adam nodded. "That's not failure, Bella. That's honor." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting the porch light. "Do you really think we deserve to stay here?" He smiled faintly. "I think people who've lost everything deserve a place to begin again." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The air between them was quiet, but full like a chord that hadn't resolved yet. Abby's laughter drifted from inside, followed by Casey's teasing voice. The world broken as it was still turned. Bella finally stood. "Then let's make this place worthy of the kindness you've shown." "Not my kindness," Adam corrected softly. "Just a pact between people who still believe in second chances." The next morning, a small sign appeared by the porch, written in Abby's uneven handwriting and colored with crayons. Team Heart. Our mission. Fix the house. Fix ourselves. Adam found it before sunrise. He smiled, tracing the letters with a paint-stained thumb. He didn't know where this road would lead, but one thing was certain: it was no longer a story of one man rebuilding his house. It was a story of 4 soldiers and one fearless little girl rebuilding their hearts. And somewhere deep inside, the old army home began to whisper again, its walls remembering what it felt like to hold love. The mornings at the old army home began to fall into a rhythm, not perfect, but steady like a heartbeat rediscovering its pace. Each dawn broke with the same sounds: the creak of old hinges, the clang of tools, and Abby's voice carrying through the air like a sunrise in song. "Team Heart mission of the day, make the kitchen smile," she declared, standing on a crate with her makeshift clipboard. The girl's authority was absolute. Even 3 seasoned servicewomen and 1 ex-pilot didn't dare disobey. "Roger that, Captain Abby," Adam said, giving a salute with mock seriousness. Bella Carter, dressed in a crisp white shirt, now smudged with dust, allowed herself a faint grin. "Permission to proceed, ma'am, permission?" "Granted," Abby shouted, giggling. The laughter bounced off the walls, filling the house that had once echoed only with wind. What had begun as a fragile truce was turning into something deeper, a partnership grounded in shared purpose and quiet trust. Inside, the work was relentless. The house had been neglected for decades. The walls were warped, the plumbing unpredictable, and the roof a puzzle of rusted nails and stubborn wood. But to Adam, every plank nailed down felt like reclaiming a piece of his life. Chloe became the house's resident electrician. Crouched beneath the kitchen counter, she rewired lines with a level of precision that made Adam whistle. "You sure you're not part machine?" he teased. "Maybe just half," she said, grinning through the sweat on her forehead. Casey got the charm genes. "Hey!" Casey shouted from the next room where she was scraping old wallpaper. "Charm doesn't fix drywall, genius." "It does when the drywall likes me," Casey quipped back, earning laughter from both Abby and Adam. Bella's approach was quieter. She moved like an architect, her eyes scanning every detail, her hands tracing old blueprints she'd drawn herself. Adam noticed that when she worked, her walls lowered her military precision, giving way to something more human. She laughed more easily now, though sometimes late in the afternoon, she'd drift into silence, staring at nothing with a haunted calm. He didn't pry. He understood that look. By the third week, progress was visible. The roof no longer leaked. The porch stood sturdy again, its columns gleaming under new paint. The house, once a skeleton of memory, was beginning to feel alive, not because of the repairs, but because of the people who touched it. One afternoon, while fixing a broken window frame together, Adam and Bella worked in quiet coordination. The rhythmic hammering was strangely soothing. Abby sat nearby, painting a wooden birdhouse with Chloe and Casey, their laughter trailing through the open window. "You were good with her," Adam said, nodding toward Abby. Bella wiped the back of her hand across her brow. "She's impossible not to be good with." "She's got that effect," he said softly. "Even when things fall apart, she keeps believing the world can be kind." Bella looked at him. "She must have learned that from you." Adam shook his head. "No. She taught it to me. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full." Bella's gaze softened her eyes, tracing the lines of the wooden frame, then drifting to the view outside. "When I was her age," she said quietly, "my father used to bring home broken things. Radios, clocks, chairs. He said fixing them was a way of saying thank you to life for giving second chances." Adam smiled faintly. "Guess that's what we're doing here. Fixing what's broken." "No," he said, "saying thank you." That evening, the wind picked up the kind that carried the smell of rain and old memories. They decided to work late, tightening the new shingles on the roof before the storm rolled in. As thunder rumbled in the distance, Bella climbed up beside Adam, the two of them working under the dim beam of a portable lamp. Rain began to spit across the tin surface, each drop echoing like a heartbeat. "Storm's moving fast," Adam said. Bella adjusted her footing, her voice steady despite the wind. "You really think this roof will hold?" He smiled, tightening a bolt. "If it doesn't, at least, we'll know who to blame." Lightning flashed, illuminating her face, the same determined calm he'd seen in flight officers facing chaos. For a brief second, he saw the ghost of the woman she once was, the commander who took responsibility for everything, even what wasn't hers. When the rain began to pour, they moved to the porch for cover. The others had already gathered inside, laughing over cocoa and dry towels. Bella stood beside him, both of them dripping wet, watching the storm carve silver lines through the night. "You didn't have to let us stay," she said quietly. "You didn't even ask what we'd done." "I didn't need to," he replied. "Sometimes people don't need interrogations, they just need space to heal." She studied him for a long moment. "You talk like someone who's been through his own storm." He didn't look at her. "Maybe I have. Maybe I'm still in it." The thunder cracked, and for a moment neither spoke. Then Bella said almost to herself, "You know, kindness, like that scares people." Adam turned to her, surprised. "Why? 'Cause it asks for nothing in return," she whispered. "And people like me, we don't know how to accept that." He met her gaze. "Maybe this is where you learn." For a moment she didn't look away. The storm reflected in her eyes, wild, bright, alive. Then she exhaled softly and nodded. By morning the rain had passed. The air was clean and still carrying the faint scent of pine and wet soil. The porch roof held strong. Abby raced outside barefoot, splashing through puddles, shouting, "We beat the storm!" Casey and Chloe joined her, laughing as they chased her through the yard. Adam stood by the doorway, coffee in hand, watching the chaos unfold. Beside him, Bella appeared holding a towel, and a rare, unguarded smile. "Looks like your team survived their first battle," he said. She glanced at him, the smile deepening. "Thanks to their commander." He laughed. "You mean you?" Bella shook her head. "No. You." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time the thought crossed his mind that maybe this house wasn't just healing old wounds. Maybe it was rewriting the story of how lost people found one another again. The old army home stood silent behind them, its windows glimmering in the light. Somewhere within its walls, the echoes of laughter mingled with the whisper of wood and wind and the slow, steady rhythm of something being rebuilt, not just in timber, but in hearts. Night had a way of bringing old memories to the surface. For Adam Brooks, it came in waves, flashes of cockpit lights, the sound of a radio cutting out mid-mission, the hollow ring of silence that followed. But tonight, the ghosts came wrapped in thunder. The storm began just after sunset. The air thickened the pines around the house, bending under the first gusts. Adam was patching a corner of the porch when he saw the clouds rolling in black, heavy and fast. Everyone inside, he shouted over the wind. Bella Carter looked up from her notes, her uniform shirt rolled to the elbows. "Roof's not secure yet. Doesn't matter. It's not worth a life," he called back. The first crack of lightning split the horizon. Rain followed hard and sudden. They scrambled to gather tools and materials, Chloe and Casey, dragging the generator into the shed, while Abby clutched her teddy bear and counted flashes by the window. By the time Adam reached the roof ladder, Bella was already halfway up it. "What are you doing?" he barked. Securing the tarp, she yelled, her voice steady against the storm. "Bella, get down. Not until this side's covered. The whole frame could rot through if the water." Her sentence was swallowed by a boom of thunder. The tarp flapped violently, nearly pulling her off balance. Adam cursed under his breath and climbed after her, the rain stinging his face like salt. At the top, the world was chaos wind, howling rain slicing sideways. The beam of his flashlight caught Bella's face, fierce and focused hair plastered to her cheek. She tied down the corner of the tarp with military precision hands, quick despite the cold. "Hold this," she shouted, tossing him the rope. He gripped it tight, their shoulders brushing as they worked. The smell of rain, sweat, and pine mixed with adrenaline. "This is insane," he muttered. "Welcome to my world," she said with a grim smile. A sudden gust tore through, ripping one end of the tarp free. It snapped like a sail. Bella reached for it, and for a terrifying moment, her foot slipped on the slick surface. Adam lunged, catching her wrist before she fell. "Got you," he said, his voice raw with effort. Her other hand found his shoulder gripping hard. Their faces were inches apart, rainwater streaming between them. For a heartbeat, the storm vanished, nothing but the sound of their breathing and the press of her pulse beneath his fingers. "Thanks," she whispered. He didn't answer. He just nodded and held on until they were both safe on solid footing. They secured the tarp together, muscles, aching hearts, pounding. When they finally climbed down, drenched and exhausted, the others cheered from the doorway. Abby ran up and wrapped her small arms around Bella's leg. "You're all wet," she said, laughing. Bella crouched down. "Guess I needed a bath." Abby grinned. "Mommy used to say rain makes everything clean again." Something flickered in Bella's expression, a tenderness she tried to hide. She hugged the child tight, whispering, "Your mom was a wise woman." Adam stood nearby, silent. The sight did something to him, a mix of warmth and ache. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed seeing another adult kneel to meet his daughter's world. Later that night, after Abby was asleep and the twins had retreated to their room, Adam found Bella sitting by the fireplace, her damp hair loose around her shoulders. The storm still whispered against the windows. He poured 2 mugs of coffee and handed her one. "You should rest," "I've tried," she said quietly. "Doesn't work. My mind's too loud." He sat across from her, the firelight flickering between them. "You want to talk about it?" For a long time, she didn't answer. Then she said, "You ever make a choice that cost you everything and still not know if it was the right one?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah. Once or twice." She stared into the flames. "That mission, the one that ended my career, I was ordered to turn back. But there were still people alive out there. The storm was too strong. We couldn't get visual. I stayed. I thought if I pushed just 5 more minutes." Her voice cracked. "The chopper went down. My co-pilot didn't make it. Command said it was my fault for disobeying." Adam's jaw tightened. "You took the blame." "I was the commanding officer," she said bitterly. "The responsibility ends with me." "Or begins with you," he said softly. "You stayed because you cared. That's not a crime, that's conscience." Bella looked up, her eyes glistening. "You really believe that I know it?" he said. "Because I've been there. Rescue pilot 10 years ago. Lost 3 men in a storm off Key West. My fault. Maybe. But if I hadn't tried, I'd have lost myself too." For a moment, the room was silent except for the fire's crackle. Then Bella spoke again, her voice almost a whisper. "Loyalty hurts, doesn't it?" "Yeah," he said. "But it also saves us." Their eyes met and something passed between them, quiet recognition, the kind that needed no words. The storm outside faded to a gentle rain. Inside another storm, the one inside, both of them began to calm. Hours later, the house slept. Adam checked the doors, then stopped at the living room doorway. Bella had fallen asleep by the fire, her head resting on the arm of the couch, a blanket draped loosely over her shoulders. In the soft light, she looked different, younger, peaceful, almost fragile. He stood there for a while, listening to the rhythm of the rain and the soft hum of the hearth. Then he whispered almost to himself, "You're safe here." When the first light of dawn touched the window, the storm had passed. The world outside shimmered, washed clean. Water dripped from the eaves in silver threads, and the scent of wet pine filled the air. Adam brewed another pot of coffee, his muscles sore, but his spirit lighter. Abby tiptoed in her hair tangled from sleep. "Daddy did the storm go away," he smiled. "Yeah, kiddo, it's gone." She hugged his leg and said, "Miss Bella said, storms are just the sky washing away its tears." He looked toward the living room where Bella stirred under the blanket and felt something shift in his chest, something quiet, unfamiliar, and hopeful. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds, touching the repaired roof that had survived the night. Inside, 2 souls who had nearly drowned in their own storms had begun at last to find shore. The following week brought a peace that almost felt undeserved. The spring air was crisp and bright, carrying the scent of freshly cut wood and blooming magnolias. The old army home, once a hollow ruin, now pulsed with life. The porch was newly painted, the windows gleamed, and laughter filled the air again, the kind of laughter that had muscle memory, as if the house itself remembered how to echo joy. Adam Brooks stood outside, sleeves rolled up, sanding a window frame. Abby sat on the steps, her small hands carefully arranging daisies in an old mason jar. Inside, Chloe and Casey argued playfully about measurements, and Bella's voice floated through the open window, calm and steady, reading instructions from an engineering manual. It felt like a family. An odd patchwork one maybe, but family nonetheless. Yet as Adam often reminded himself, peace was fragile, especially for people with unfinished histories. He noticed Bella stepping out of the house, her white shirt rolled at the sleeves, clipboard in hand. She looked relaxed, almost radiant under the morning light, until a flicker of unease crossed her face. "Something wrong?" Adam asked, lowering his tools. Maybe nothing, she said, scanning the distant road. Or maybe everything. He followed her gaze, a dust trail rising from the direction of the main road, where an approaching military jeep was cutting through the sunlight. Bella's jaw tightened. I recognize that vehicle. Within minutes, the jeep pulled into the yard. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, one young, stiff, clearly uncomfortable, and another older, wearing the insignia of a senior investigator. His presence carried authority, but also weariness, the look of a man sent to do someone else's unfinished work. Commander Bella Carter, the older officer said formally, under direct orders of the Naval Review Board, we need you and your unit to vacate this property immediately. This is classified as a former federal installation. Unauthorized civilian habitation violates Regulation Code 2181. The words cut through the calm morning like a blade. Bella straightened her training, instinctively kicking in. This land was sold off years ago. It's privately owned now. The officer looked unconvinced. Our records don't show any civilian ownership transfer. Adam stepped forward, wiping his hands on his jeans. That's because you're reading outdated records. He pulled a folded envelope from his toolbox, the deed still marked with the county clerk's seal. Name's Adam Brooks. Bought it fair and legal. You're standing on private property. The officer's expression shifted, uncertain now. Mr. Brooks, with all due respect. With all due respect, Adam interrupted, his voice low but steady. These people are my guests. You don't get to barge in here and throw out good people without facts. The younger soldier flinched at his tone, but the older man studied Adam more closely. His eyes narrowed. Brooks, he murmured. Adam Brooks. Navy rescue. Adam's posture stiffened slightly. That was a long time ago. Recognition dawned on the officer's face. Call sign Ghost 6. Chloe and Casey exchanged glances, confused. Bella's eyes widened. The officer stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're the one who pulled Commander Price out of the Atlantic back in 14, the crash off the Virginia coast. Adam's jaw flexed. I just did my job. You saved a man half the Navy couldn't find, the officer said. We thought you were gone. Most people did, Adam replied quietly. For the first time, the officer's tone softened. Well, I'll be damned. Ghost 6, he extended a hand. In that case, I'll make sure this ownership confusion disappears by tomorrow morning. Bella blinked, just like that. Just like that, he said, turning to her. Because anyone who earns the trust of that man deserves a fair review. He saluted her with a kind of respect that hadn't graced her in years, then motioned for his driver to start the engine. As the jeep rolled away, dust swirling behind it, the yard fell silent except for the chirping of distant birds. Casey exhaled. What just happened? Chloe smirked. Apparently our janitor has a call sign. Adam rubbed the back of his neck. Don't start. But Bella was still watching him, her expression unreadable. Ghost 6, she said softly. That's more than a call sign, isn't it? He sighed, setting down his tools. Once upon a time, maybe. I was a rescue pilot. My last mission didn't go the way it should have. She stepped closer, her voice gentler now. You saved a life that day. And lost 2 others, he said. That's the part people forget. Their eyes met, soldier to soldier, guilt recognizing guilt. In that quiet, something unspoken passed between them, the understanding that survival always comes with a cost. That evening the house felt different. Not unsettled, just heavier, charged with the quiet weight of revelation. Abby, oblivious to the morning's events, was coloring by the fireplace, while Chloe and Casey prepared dinner. Bella found Adam outside, sitting on the porch steps, the night breeze tugging at his worn jacket. The stars were faint, hidden behind clouds. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For standing up for us. For standing up for me. He looked down at the worn wood beneath his boots. It wasn't about standing up. It was about doing what's right. She sat beside him, leaving a careful distance between them. Still, I owe you. He shook his head. You don't owe me anything. You've already paid enough in ways most people never see. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. The night hummed with crickets, and somewhere far off the wind carried the scent of rain again. You know, Bella said after a moment when they suspended me, I told myself I didn't care, that I'd made peace with it. But seeing that Jeep today, she laughed quietly, bitterly. Turns out I haven't. Closure's a tricky thing, Adam said. Sometimes it only comes when you stop chasing it. She looked at him, her expression softening. You sound like someone who's learned that the hard way. I have. Their eyes met, and for the briefest heartbeat, the world seemed to fade. No storm, no guilt, just two broken souls sitting on a porch that somehow felt like the safest place on earth. Inside, Abby's laughter drifted through the screen door. Daddy, Miss Bella, come see, I made stars on the wall. Bella smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. She's the heart of this place. She is, Adam said, rising. Then he looked back at Bella, voice low. But maybe you're the soul. For once, she didn't deflect or retreat. She just looked at him quiet, the night reflected in her eyes. Behind them, the old army home glowed softly in the darkness, no longer just a shelter, but a sanctuary forged, not by walls and nails, but by courage, forgiveness, and the beginnings of something neither of them dared to name. Spring had fully claimed the land around the old army home. The air was sweet with lilac, and the morning light seemed softer now, as if the world itself had decided to take a breath. The storm, the visit, and the ghosts of the past were fading, replaced by something fragile, but new peace. It began as most good things do in the soil. Casey was the first to suggest it. This place needs color, she said one morning, holding up a packet of seeds she'd found in town. If we're rebuilding a home, we might as well grow something that lives, Chloe laughed. Since when did you become the gardening type? Since now, Casey replied, chin lifted in mock defiance. By midday, everyone had joined her. The backyard, once a field of weeds and gravel, became a work site of a different kind. Adam brought out shovels and gloves. Bella drew a rough layout on paper, and Abby handed out paper cups of lemonade like a tiny foreman supervising her crew. This rose for sunflowers, Abby declared proudly, because they always look happy. Adam smiled, ruffling her hair. Then this rose for you, kiddo. Bella crouched in the dirt beside them, her pristine navy-white shirt now smeared with soil. It suited her somehow, the earth grounding her, stripping away the armor of rank. She handled each seed with care, as if planting fragments of hope itself. I used to help my mother garden, she said quietly. She said you could tell a lot about a person by how they treat small growing things. Adam looked up from the patch he was tending. And what would she say about you? Bella smiled faintly. That I forgot how to be gentle. He leaned on his shovel. I don't think you forgot. You just got busy surviving. The words seemed to hang between them, soft, but deep, like a truth neither wanted to name. Over the following days, the garden took shape. Wooden borders framed the flower beds. An old fence became a trellis. Abby named each corner Courage Hill Sunshine Row, and the quiet place, a shaded nook beneath the pines, where Bella sometimes sat to read reports she hadn't yet sent back to command. Chloe and Casey turned out to be naturals at construction, fashioning birdhouses and benches from leftover wood. At night, when the work was done, they gathered on the porch, tired but smiling, with mugs of cocoa warming their hands. Feels like we've been here forever, Casey said one evening, watching the fireflies blink over the field. Feels like we finally stopped running, Chloe added softly. Bella didn't speak. She just looked at the horizon, where the last traces of daylight lingered, and felt something inside her unclench. The next afternoon, Adam found her kneeling in the garden, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled. The sun caught her profile calm, resolute, beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with appearance, and everything to do with peace. Hard won. "You've been out here since morning," he said, leaning on the fence. "I'm not used to stopping once I start," she said, smiling faintly. Bad habit from the Navy. He watched her pat the soil around a row of wildflowers. "You ever think about going back?" Her hands paused. "They're reviewing my case. The suspension could be lifted, and if it is..." She looked up at him, her eyes searching his. "Duty has a way of calling, Adam. You know that." "Yeah," he said quietly. "But sometimes duty and destiny aren't the same thing." She studied him for a moment, then stood brushing dirt from her knees. "You think I don't belong there anymore?" "I think you've given enough," he said gently. "And maybe it's time someone took care of you for once." The words disarmed her. She opened her mouth to reply, but Abby's voice called from across the yard, breaking the moment. "Miss Bella, look, my flower bloomed." Bella turned. A small purple bud had opened in the sunlight, delicate and bright. Abby beamed, holding it like a treasure. Bella knelt beside her. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "You took good care of it." Abby nodded solemnly. "Daddy says things grow when you talk kindly to them." Bella met Adam's gaze across the yard. "He's right," she said. "Maybe people do too." That evening, when the others had gone inside, Bella stayed on the porch, staring out at the garden. The air hummed with the soft rhythm of crickets, and the sky glowed faintly blue with the promise of rain. Adam joined her, 2 mugs in hand. "I think you built something special out there," he said, handing her one. She smiled. "We built it." He sat beside her. The silence between them was comfortable, threaded with warmth. "Funny," he said after a while. "When I first bought this place, I thought it was falling apart. But now, I think it was just waiting for the right people." Bella turned to him, her expression soft. "Do you ever think some homes find us instead of the other way around?" He looked out at the field where fireflies flickered like tiny lanterns. "Yeah, I do now." The porch light cast a halo over them, gentle and golden. The scent of the new garden drifted on the breeze, damp earth, fresh life, the faint sweetness of lavender. "Thank you," Bella said suddenly. "For what?" "For giving us this chance. For trusting us, when you had no reason to." He met her eyes. "You don't need to thank me, Bella. You just needed someone to remind you that you still deserve the sky." She exhaled slowly, her shoulders easing. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was standing at attention. She was simply here. When Adam checked on the garden the next morning, he found a small wooden sign planted near the center bed. The handwriting was crooked, but heartfelt. The garden of hope for everyone, still learning to bloom. He didn't need to ask who made it. The handwriting was Abby's, but the message was pure Bella, steady kind, and brave enough to believe in new beginnings. As the sun rose over the house, the light spilled across the petals, catching on the windows, the porch, and finally the faces of the people who had made this place home. And in that quiet hour, surrounded by laughter and growing things, Adam realized something: they weren't just rebuilding walls anymore. They were planting the future. Summer rolled in quietly, bringing with it the heavy warmth of southern air and the slow hum of cicadas that seemed to echo through every wall of the old army home. The garden had bloomed into a riot of color: sunflowers craning toward the sky, lavender bending in the breeze, and Abby's little patch of daisies standing proudly near the porch. But inside the house, an unease had settled. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. It came in a plain white envelope stamped with a navy seal. Bella Carter held it in her hands as if it were an unexploded shell. The edges were crisp, the ink official, and cold. She didn't open it right away. She simply stood by the window, the paper trembling between her fingers, while Adam and the others watched from the table. "What is it?" Casey asked cautiously. Bella took a slow breath. "It's from the Naval Review Board." Her voice was low, steady, but her eyes betrayed her. "They've reopened my case." Chloe frowned. "Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. I don't know." Adam wiped his hands on a rag and stepped closer. "You want me to stay?" She hesitated. "No. I should face it myself." But her hands wouldn't move. They trembled just enough that Abby, sitting cross-legged on the floor with crayons, looked up and said softly, "It's okay, Miss Bella. Bad news can't hurt if people love you." Something in those words loosened the fear in the room. Bella smiled faintly, then tore the envelope open. Her eyes skimmed the page. The room held its breath. Finally, she looked up. "They're calling for a formal review hearing. Next Monday. Washington." Casey exhaled. "That's soon." Chloe squeezed her sister's shoulder. "We'll go with you." Bella shook her head. "No. You'll stay here. This is my responsibility." Adam studied her. "You're not alone in this." She met his gaze. "I was when they suspended me. I can be again." He didn't argue, but his silence was heavy. The following days moved like slow waves. Bella kept herself busy checking the garden, helping Abby with her reading lessons, fixing small details in the house that didn't really need fixing. Adam noticed the shift, the way she smiled more than she spoke, the way she looked at the horizon too long. On Friday evening, he found her by the lake behind the property, sitting on an old wooden bench, half swallowed by reeds. The water shimmered under the setting sun, calm and endless. "You're leaving tomorrow," he said quietly. She nodded. Early morning, he sat beside her, watching ripples fan across the surface. "You're afraid they won't listen." "I'm afraid they will," she admitted. "Because if they clear me, then I have to choose between what I love and where I belong." He was silent for a moment. Maybe they're the same thing. She turned to him. "They used to be. The Navy was my family, my purpose." And now, Bella looked at the reflection of the old house in the water. "Now there's this," she said softly. "A house that shouldn't have survived. A man who gave strangers a home. A little girl who reminds me that kindness doesn't need permission." Adam smiled faintly. "That sounds like purpose to me." She exhaled slowly, the words settling somewhere deep. Then almost in a whisper, she said, "Thank you, Adam, for reminding me that I still have something left to give." He looked at her, his chest tightening with something he didn't dare name. "You always did." The silence that followed was filled not with distance, but with the kind of understanding that only two broken souls could share. When she finally stood to leave, the wind lifted her hair, and the fading light caught the edge of her profile, strong, resolute, but gentler than before. Monday came like a storm without thunder. Bella left before dawn, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder. Abby hugged her tightly, whispering, "Come back soon." "Okay, Daddy says heroes always do." Bella knelt to meet her eyes. "I'll come back, little one, no matter what they decide." Adam watched from the doorway, hands in his pockets, trying to mask the ache that came with watching her walk away. When the sound of her truck faded down the road, the house felt quieter, emptier somehow, though it was still full of people. The hearing lasted 6 hours. Bella stood before a panel of officers who wore the same insignia she once did. They questioned her choices, her motives, her command. She answered everyone with calm precision, refusing to defend herself with anger. She didn't speak of guilt or regret, only duty and compassion. And when they asked why she disobeyed a direct order, she told the truth. Because when you hear a voice crying for help over open water, you don't think of regulations. You think of saving a life. There was silence in the room. For the first time, she saw something shift in their eyes, understanding, maybe even respect. When the verdict came, it was late afternoon, cleared of all charges, full reinstatement offered. But as she held the document in her hands, Bella realized the uniform she had longed for no longer fit the same way. That evening, Adam was in the garden, mending a fence post, when headlights swept across the field. Abby jumped up from the porch, squealing. "She's back." Bella stepped out of the truck, her posture as straight as ever, but her eyes softer, lighter. Adam walked toward her, wiping his hands on his jeans. "You won," he said simply. "I did," she answered, her voice steady, then quieter. "But I'm not going back." He blinked. "You're turning it down?" She nodded. Command offered reinstatement. New unit, new start. But the truth is, I already found both here. Abby ran into her arms before Adam could respond, and Bella lifted the little girl, laughing through tears she hadn't meant to shed. When she looked back at Adam, she said, "I spent years following orders. Maybe it's time I start following my heart." He didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded. That night, they had dinner on the porch, the whole unlikely family. The air was thick with the scent of the garden, candles flickered in the breeze, and laughter returned to the old house once more. As the stars came out, Bella raised her glass. "To second chances," she said. Adam met her eyes, and to knowing when to take them. The others cheered softly, but in the silence that followed, their gaze lingered on each other, a promise unspoken but deeply understood. Some storms, Adam realized, don't destroy. They just clear the air. The days after Bella's return were warm and gentle, the kind of southern summer that carried the scent of honeysuckle and the lazy hum of life moving slowly. Yet inside the old army home, a subtle quiet began to settle. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that lives in the corners after something precious shifts. Bella still smiled, still helped Abby water the flowers, still joined the evening meals. But there was distance in her eyes, a thought she hadn't said out loud. Adam noticed it in the way she lingered by the window at night, staring toward the road, as though waiting for something, or perhaps trying to decide if she should leave again. He didn't ask. Not yet. That morning, Adam was fixing a section of the porch railing that had come loose in the rain. The rhythmic sound of his hammer echoed across the yard. Abby sat nearby, drawing in her notebook, humming softly. From inside, he could hear Chloe and Casey laughing about a recipe gone wrong. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast and determination. Bella stepped out holding 2 cups of coffee. "You work too much," she said, handing him one. He smirked. "Says the woman who repaired the fence at midnight." She smiled, settling beside him on the steps. "I couldn't sleep. The quiet keeps me awake." He nodded. "Yeah. Quiet's strange when you've lived too long with noise." For a moment they just sat there, sipping coffee, and watching the wind ripple through the tall grass. Then Bella spoke again softly. "The Navy offered me a civilian contract, training division, stateside." Adam looked at her, trying to keep his tone even. "You thinking about taking it?" She hesitated. "It's not command. It's safer. It's a chance to teach, to stay connected without going back to who I was." He nodded, staring at the horizon. "Sounds like a good thing." "It is," she said, but her voice betrayed her. It's not here." The words hung between them like smoke. Abby's laughter drifted from the yard light and free, and Adam felt a slow ache rise in his chest, that old ache of losing something before it's even gone. Over the next few weeks, the house grew quieter. Bella spent more time walking the perimeter of the property, her thoughts distant. Casey and Chloe noticed too, but said nothing. They knew the look of someone trying to talk themselves into leaving. One evening, as twilight deepened over the garden, Adam found Bella sitting alone on the porch. The air was thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth. She held an envelope in her hand, the offer letter. "Is that the contract?" he asked gently. She nodded. "They need an answer by Friday." He sat beside her, folding his hands. "And what does your heart say?" She gave a faint laugh without humor. "My heart doesn't get a vote these days." He looked at her for a long time. Maybe that's the problem. Bella turned toward him, the porch light catching the gold flecks in her eyes. "Adam, what you've built here, it's beautiful. But it's yours. I was never meant to stay forever." "You keep saying that," he said quietly, "but this place, it hasn't been mine alone for a while now." Her breath hitched, and for a moment she looked as though she might say something more. Instead, she rose, walked to the railing, and placed the envelope on it. The wind tugged at the corners of the paper. "Sometimes," she said softly, "it's easier to rebuild a house than to believe we deserve to live in it." And with that, she went inside, leaving the night and Adam's silence behind her. The next morning she was gone. Her duffel bag was missing from the corner of her room. Her mug was clean and set neatly by the sink. On the porch, where she'd left the envelope, there was only a folded piece of paper weighed down by a small stone. Adam unfolded it slowly. "No one ever really leaves home. Some of us just have to find the courage to come back." He read it twice, then again until the ink blurred. Abby found him sitting there, the letter in his hand. "Daddy, where's Miss Bella?" He forced a small smile. "She had to go for a while, sweetheart." "Is she coming back?" Adam swallowed hard. "I think so. When she's ready." Abby nodded, accepting it the way only a child could. "Then we'll keep her flower alive until she does." She ran off toward the garden, and Adam watched her kneel beside the patch Bella had planted, wild flowers, small but stubborn. He looked back at the empty porch and felt the weight of it settle on him. Not grief, exactly. Something quieter, lonelier. The absence of laughter at breakfast, the empty chair at the table, the sound of boots no longer pacing the floorboards at dawn. For the first time since moving into the old army home, he felt the silence again. That evening he sat outside with a cup of coffee gone cold. The sky had darkened to indigo stars peeking through the clouds. Casey and Chloe had gone to bed early. Abby was asleep, clutching her teddy bear. He looked out over the yard at the faint shimmer of moonlight on the garden fence and felt the urge to talk to someone who wasn't there. "You did it again, Brooks," he muttered to himself. "You let someone in just long enough to remember what it felt like to be whole." The wind rustled through the trees, soft but steady, as if answering him. He leaned back, staring at the roofline they had rebuilt together, the porch they had painted side by side, and realized something strange. Though Bella was gone, the house didn't feel empty. Not entirely. Her presence lingered in the way the light fell across the stairs and the smell of lavender by the window, in the quiet strength of every beam they'd set in place together. She had left pieces of herself behind, woven into the very bones of the place. Later that night, unable to sleep, Adam went back outside to check the porch railing. His fingers brushed against something smooth near the step, a glint beneath the wood. He pulled it out and found a small pendant, a silver compass charm. On the back, etched faintly, were 3 words: "Find your way." He turned it over in his hand, smiling despite himself. "She really does like leaving breadcrumbs," he whispered. And though the night was still and silent, something deep within him stirred. Not the heavy ache of loss, but the quiet promise of return. The porch creaked softly as he sat down again, the compass warm in his palm. Above him, the stars stretched wide, patient and forgiving, waiting for the story to find its next chapter. 3 months passed. The seasons began to turn again, though time in the old army home didn't move like it did for everyone else. It moved slower, wrapped in the quiet rhythm of rebuilding, of waiting, of holding on to something unspoken. The sunflowers in the garden had grown tall now, bending toward the late summer sky. The wooden porch glowed under layers of polish and sunlight. From the outside, the house looked whole again, but inside, there was still a hollow place where Bella's laughter used to echo. Abby noticed first. "Daddy," she said one morning as she tied her sneakers with exaggerated care. "The house sounds different when Miss Bella's not here, like it's whispering too softly." Adam looked up from his coffee and smiled, though his chest tightened. Maybe it's just missing her voice. Abby tilted her head. "Then we should sing louder, until she hears us." He chuckled, ruffling her hair. "Maybe you're right, Captain Abby." And so they did. They sang while planting new flowers, while Chloe and Casey hammered the last boards for the guest cabin out back. The home came alive again, not as before, but in its own quiet way, the way that people heal when they don't rush the process. Yet some nights, when the others had gone to bed, Adam sat alone on the porch, watching the gravel road that led out to the highway. He never admitted it aloud, but every sound of tires on distant asphalt made his pulse quicken. It was early September when the sound finally came again. Not imagination this time, but real. The low rumble of an engine, the crunch of tires on gravel, then headlights cutting through the dusk. Adam froze mid-step, the wrench still in his hand. The air shifted. Casey looked up from the porch swing. Chloe paused mid-sentence, and Abby, playing in the yard, turned toward the light. A Jeep rolled to a stop at the gate. When the door opened, the world seemed to hold its breath. Bella stepped out, her white uniform catching the sunset, the same one she had once worn with the weight of command. But something was different now. Her posture was still straight. Her expression calm, yet there was a softness about her, a warmth that no rank could command. Abby dropped her toy and sprinted across the yard. Miss Bella knelt just in time to catch her in her arms. Abby's laughter rang through the open air, bright and pure. "You came back. I promised I didn't," Bella whispered, hugging her tightly. "This time, I'm not leaving." When she stood, her gaze found Adam. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You're late," he said, finally, his voice rough with something between relief and disbelief. She smiled, that small, knowing smile he'd missed more than he could admit. "I got lost." He folded his arms. "You, Commander Carter, the woman with a compass for a soul." She reached into her pocket and held up the small silver pendant, the one he'd found months ago. "I believe this is yours." He took it gently, his thumb brushing the engraving. "Find your way," he read aloud. "Guess you did." "Not until now," she said softly. That evening they gathered on the porch. The sun melted into the horizon, painting the sky in gold and rose. Chloe and Casey brought out dinner, roast chicken, corn, and bread still warm from the oven. Abby insisted on lighting candles, though half of them leaned sideways in their holders. "So," Casey said, grinning, "does this mean the prodigal commander's home for good?" Bella laughed. "For good," she said. "They reassigned me to oversee veteran outreach in this district. Looks like I'll be your neighbor, and possibly your volunteer." Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Volunteer, huh? Wait till you see the leaky roof on the barn." "I've survived worse," Bella replied, lifting her glass. "To new beginnings. To family," Adam added quietly. They clinked their glasses, and laughter carried into the night. Later, when the others had gone inside, Bella lingered on the porch. The crickets sang in the tall grass, and the stars emerged, one by one, slow and steady. Adam joined her, leaning on the railing. "You really planning to stay?" he asked, his tone half teasing, half afraid of the answer. She looked out over the garden, her hands folded around a mug of tea. "I've spent my whole life going where I was needed. This time, I want to go where I'm wanted." He smiled faintly. "You sure about that? We've got a demanding 6-year-old, a half-broken barn, and a house that groans when it rains." She turned toward him, her voice gentle. "And a man who thinks he's better at fixing things than he is, at feeling them." He laughed softly. "You might have a point." "Adam," she said, her voice dipping lower, steadier. "You gave me a place when I had nothing. You saw something worth believing in when I didn't." So, yes, I'm sure. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her. Really. Looked at the woman who had walked through storms and silence and somehow come back. Not broken, but transformed. "Welcome home, Bella," he said quietly. She smiled, eyes glistening. "It already feels like it." Abby's sleepy voice broke the quiet. "Daddy," she murmured from the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Is Miss Bella staying forever now?" Adam looked at Bella, who knelt and brushed a strand of hair from the girl's face. "If she'll have us," Bella said softly. Abby grinned, wrapping her arms around her neck. "Then we're even, 'cause we already have her." Adam felt something deep inside him settle, that rare stillness that only comes when everything finally fits. Later that night, after tucking Abby into bed, he found Bella by the window, gazing at the moonlight spilling across the floor. He joined her hands in his pockets. "You know," she said when I left, "I thought I was chasing purpose. Turns out purpose was waiting here all along." He nodded, his voice low. "Sometimes the hardest part isn't finding where you belong. It's believing you deserve to stay." She turned to him, eyes luminous in the soft light. "Then promise me we both will. Stay, I mean." He reached for her hand, rough palm against her steady one. "I promise." Outside, the wind stirred the trees, whispering through the garden that bore their shared fingerprints. Seeds of second chances, growing wild and strong. For the first time in a long while, Adam Brooks felt no need to look toward the horizon. The story he'd been running from had already come home. A full year passed since the day Bella came back, and the old army home no longer looked like a relic of the past. It had transformed into something living, breathing, a place that carried the scent of fresh-cut lumber, home-cooked meals, and the faint laughter of people who had learned how to start over. A new sign hung above the front gate, hand-carved from oak and sanded smooth by Adam's steady hands. "The Haven Home, where duty meets kindness." The letters glimmered in the sunlight, painted in gold by Chloe's careful brush. Abby had insisted on adding a small red heart at the bottom corner. "So everyone knows it's full of love," she said proudly. And she was right. The Haven had become a sanctuary for veterans who had nowhere to go, men and women whose lives had been paused by injury, loss, or loneliness. Adam and Bella had turned the old barn into living quarters. Casey managed supplies, and Chloe taught basic carpentry to anyone willing to learn. The sound of saws, laughter, and music often blended with the bird song at dawn. To outsiders, it was just a quiet property on the edge of town. But to those who lived there, it was sacred ground, a place where people who once wore uniforms learned to wear hope again. That morning, the sun rose over the fields in soft amber tones. Adam walked the property with his usual calm stride, coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. His once-worn fatigues had been replaced by jeans and a denim shirt, but the quiet strength in his posture hadn't changed. He paused at the garden. The flowers were in full bloom, the very same beds they had planted together a year ago. Bella stood among them, watering the roots, her hair catching the morning light. She still wore white on most days, but now it wasn't a uniform. It was simply who she was. calm, steady, luminous. "Morning, Commander," Adam teased. "Morning, Chief Janitor," she replied without looking up, smiling softly. He sipped his coffee. "You know, most people would have retired after clearing their name." "And miss this," she said, gesturing toward the garden, the laughter in the distance, the sight of Abby chasing butterflies. "Not a chance. You're working harder now than you did in the Navy." She glanced at him, eyes warm. "That's because this mission matters more." Adam chuckled, shaking his head. "You always talk like a commander giving orders. And you always follow them," she said. "So it works." By midday, the house buzzed with activity. A new veteran named Morales had arrived, a young Marine missing part of his leg and most of his confidence. Abby insisted on giving him a tour, holding his hand the way only a child can. "This is the kitchen," she said brightly. "Miss Bella says food is the best medicine. Daddy says coffee is. Miss Casey says naps are." Morales smiled for the first time in months. "Sounds like you've got the cure for everything here." Abby nodded solemnly. "We do. It's called kindness." Bella watched from the doorway, her heart swelling. That little girl, the heart of the home, had unknowingly become their best ambassador. Every broken soul that crossed the threshold seemed to heal a little faster after meeting her. When Adam joined her at the door, Bella said quietly, "You know she's turning into quite the leader." He smiled. "Takes after her teacher?" "She takes after both of us," Bella said. "Your steadiness, my stubbornness." He laughed. "That's a dangerous mix. Or the perfect one." Their eyes met, and the silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of peace, the kind that comes after long wars finally end. That evening, the community gathered on the porch for dinner. Lanterns hung from the beams, casting a warm golden glow. The long table overflowed with food, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and Abby's famous apple pie with Casey's help, though she claimed all the credit. As the sun sank low, laughter filled the air. The veterans shared stories, some funny, some painful, but all of them honest. The porch had become their safe ground, where no one had to pretend anymore. Bella stood to speak, her voice clear but gentle. A year ago, this house was falling apart, and so were we. But look at it now, alive, strong, full of second chances. She looked around the table, her gaze resting on each face, finally landing on Adam. "We've learned something here that the military never taught us, that duty doesn't end when the uniform comes off. It just changes its form." Adam raised his glass slightly. "To all who still serve, not with weapons, but with open hearts." The crowd murmured in agreement, glasses clinking softly. Abby beamed, whispering, "That was a good line, Daddy." He grinned. "Think I might have heard it somewhere before." Later that night, when the guests had gone to bed and the stars were high, Adam and Bella found themselves alone on the porch again, their place, their rhythm. "You know," he said, looking out at the glowing windows, "this house used to be just a place I bought out of desperation. Now it's everything." Bella leaned against the railing, her voice low and sincere. "That's because you filled it with people who needed what you once did belonging." He turned to her, his eyes reflecting the warm light. "And you filled it with grace." She smiled a little shyly. "We both did." They stood in silence for a moment, the kind of quiet that spoke more than words. Fireflies drifted between them, blinking like tiny messengers. Finally, Bella said, "You ever think about what comes next?" He chuckled softly. "Tomorrow. Probably fixing that leaky pipe in the guest cabin. I meant after that." He met her gaze, steady and sure. "No, I try not to, because right now feels enough." She nodded slowly, her hand brushing his as they stood side by side. "Right now is enough." From inside, Abby's sleepy voice carried faintly through the open window. "Good night, Daddy." "Good night, Miss Bella." Bella smiled. "Good night, sweetheart," she whispered back. Adam turned to her, his voice gentle. "You know she sees you as part of this family." Bella's eyes glistened in the soft light. "That's because she's wise beyond her years." He smiled, then spoke quietly, the words more promise than confession. "So am I." And there under the canopy of stars, the two of them stood, not as commander and pilot, not as people bound by duty, but as souls finally at peace, building something that would outlast them both. Behind them, the old army home gleamed softly, its walls no longer bearing scars of what was lost, but shining with what had been found. Love, purpose, and the kind of kindness that changes lives. Where are you watching from tonight? We'd love to know which part of the world you call home. Share it in the comments below, because every story feels warmer when we know who's listening on the other side. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to stay with our channel for more gentle tales of kindness, redemption, and quiet courage stories that remind us all that goodness still lives in ordinary days. Thank you truly for spending your time with us. Your presence here means more than you know. Until the next story, take care of yourself and keep a little light burning in your heart.